Welcome to Avatar Session 1, everybody. Thank you for being here. I'm Maggie Spade. For any of you who do not know me already, I have been helping people reconcile their experience in their bodies with their deeper nature since 1995. And I myself have a very sensitive body that does not respond to interventions like normal bodies are supposed to, which has led to Avatar, as you will. What we'll be doing over these next 12 weeks is we're going to be doing a deep dive into deep relationship and building trust and intimacy and really turning on the secret powers of our most loyal magical familiar, our human bodies, turning on those magical properties of them. This is something that I happened into. Well, I kind of did it by accident, to be honest with you. I mean, ultimately by accident. I didn't want to go into magic or intuition or anything like that. I had been very invested, despite my nature, which insisted otherwise. I had been very invested in a rationalist and materialist point of view initially. But as I mentioned, this body does not respond to normal intervention the way that others do. I have some notes here that I'm going to look at occasionally because I'm the absent-minded professor kind of person that I could just go off into like a entirely different tangents. So I'm going to try to keep myself on task a little bit by referring to my notes occasionally. Where was I? I was the intervention. So in my family, this also runs in my family. Actually, my grandmother on my father's side was she had a reputation in the family for being a hypochondriac. I grew up believing that she was a hypochondriac, and she was always complaining about some kind of, pain or digestive problem or all kinds of things. She seemed very morose and negative, and I didn't much like being around her, to be honest with you. And I believed what everybody else, the story that everybody told, that she was a hypochondriac. And I remember really vividly a story that filtered through. Sometime when I was around a teenager, she had, this is somebody who, in her search for solutions to what was bothering her, she was going to doctor after specialist, and so on. She was, and when I was about a teenager, she somehow, for some reason, she switched primary care physicians. And this new physician asked her to bring in a list of the medications that she was taking. And, this is the time of all paper. There was no communication really between the different offices. No, all of these, she'd go to one specialist, they give her this prescription. She'd go another specialist for this symptom, they give her another prescription. And really, what I remember was that in her house, the countertop was just full of prescription bottles. And she took this list finally into the doctor, who just was absolutely shocked and said, "We have to get you off of most of these." I'm sure he knew that there were interactions happening with these medications, and he got her off of most of them. And it was like she had a second lease on life. It was extraordinary to see the difference that it made in her. She was so much brighter. She was still a little, negative, but she was so much brighter. She was one of these people. She had like one of those chairs that like lifts you up out of the chair, like, like lifts you out. She didn't even have to use that anymore. She's springing out of this thing. And seeing that allowed me to hold a little bit of skepticism when it came to medical intervention for my body, which turned out to be really important for me because I don't respond to medical intervention, as she probably didn't either. Now that I realize in retrospect, right, that for me, like have, like, I'll take a medication, like sometimes it'll require absolutely less, like half of the minimum dosage. Like I have to cut things in half, and other times I have to, like even the maximum doesn't work, and so on and so forth. So when I started feeling symptoms that were a lot like her, I started to realize the nature of invisible illness and how frustrating it can be to be moving around the world with an invisible illness that does not respond to medical intervention normally. And because I held some of that skepticism, my dear grandma, she trusted the medical establishment implicitly. She did everything that they told her to do. And it turned out a huge proportion of it was harmful to her body. So this left me with the ability, a little bit of skepticism and the ability to notice, like, when it is harmful, I can just let it go. And this has led me down many, many paths, starting with now I can't remember what the date is specifically, which year it was. It was in the 90s, somewhere between 93 and 97. I don't recall. I read Spontaneous Healing by Dr. Andrew Weil, which completely blew up my mind about medicine, and allowed me to really consider things that I may never have considered otherwise, which has led me down this path. Now, having said that, I was like invested in a materialist, rationalist point of view. The truth is that I have a very highly sensitive and empathic body, that energy was my first language. When I first the interactions that I saw between people, I understood what was being said energetically long before I understood what was being exchanged verbally. In fact, I recall being rather confused because once I started understanding the words, they often didn't match. The energy that was going between people was very confusing for a while. And I had my first spirit contact at age 6. It's a little boy named Pete. And he had a little blonde boy. He liked to hang out in the stairwell of my apartment complex. So the medical establishment on the one hand was not meeting my need, and then also my experience was clearly telling me that there was something more beyond. And my long dive into what I've found to be the most powerful place, which is that space, which is the junction between the physical body and spirit, is the single most powerful crossroads that we can work in. And this is actually the specialty of our magical familiar. Our magical familiar understands, and its function is to draw in spirit and translate that to us, to our conscious mind. That is its place. It understands truth in a deeper way than we generally give it credit for. And I've come to really deeply believe that imagination that is grounded in the body, it makes art of life and puts us into touch with the mystery. So that's what we're going to get after here. We're going to be making art of our lives through deepening intimacy and trust with our magical familiars. So today we are talking about the initial connection with our bodies. Many of you have probably done somatic work before, maybe a lot of somatic work. And I want to encourage all of you to do your best to bring a beginner's mind, a little bit of curiosity, and a sort of like etch a sketch, maybe a little bit, some of the knowledge that you may have come in with, and bring a beginner's mind to this. I remember when I first started college back in the day, and I was getting into like calculus and finite math, I was starting to struggle. And with each class that got a little bit more difficult, I was struggling just a little bit more. And I was still, kind of like getting it, kind of, but I felt like I was guessing more and more. And math, like that's not a guessing game. Math is very precise. And so I was not doing the right thing by guessing, and it was getting worse. So I decided to drop this advanced math and go to community college and take a remedial math class. I mean, I was like, give me the most remedial math class that you have. And I did. I signed up for this remedial math class. And let me tell you, in the first week, I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, what have I done? My ADHD brain was like, like they literally started with 2 plus 2, you guys. They literally started with 2 plus 2. And I was like, how am I going to make it through this class? I don't even know. But I decided to take that, beginner's mind, that little sense of curiosity and play, and to allow the math to be sort of like meditative and just a process of meditation and play a little bit. And not only was it tolerable, which was really like my first aim. I was just like, I just want to be able to tolerate getting through this. But also it ended up unlocking those gems that probably my intuition had been drawing me in for, which was, the things that I had been missing that had connected the dots for me with the advanced math. And so and there was more and more of those, as you might imagine, throughout the semester. So when I finally did jump back in, and there goes my earrings, when I did finally jump back in to advanced math, I felt landed. I felt like I understood the language in a way that I hadn't before. And I actually completely changed. Before that, I had this idea about myself that I wasn't good at math. But I learned that I actually am. And I was missing some pieces. That's all.